Welcome to the Property Couch, where each week you get to listen to two of Australia's leading property experts. Bryce Holdaway, co-host of Location Australia on Foxtel's Lifestyle Channel, and Ben Kingsley, Chair of Property Investment Professionals of Australia, and the 2014 and 2015 Property Investment Advisor of the Year.
All right, folks, you're on the Property Couch, where each week Ben and I bring you the insider's guide to property investing. Welcome back to the couch, mate.
It's finals footy time, mate. Thanks for finals footy.
Spring's in the air.
It is.
Got up early and took the boys for a bike ride this morning.
Well, there's just a bit of good weather out there at the moment, isn't there, in Melbourne? But apparently,
This
22,
afternoon.
23 today, no, Monday, 13.
Yeah.
Welcome.
But this evening, storms.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. There you go.
So
Notice how we just moved on from the footy? Like, we both just don't care about it anymore.
No, I'm still
Trade.
West Australians and still in the footy.
Right. Yeah. No.
Actually,
Look, I think Friday
I don't
nights-
want West Coast to win.
Friday night's games to pick for me. Hawthorn, Geelong.
Yeah, that'll be
You know,
nice.
so the only team that I do not want to win is Hawthorn because
Or as they like to say, Forthorn.
well, if they get to 4, then obviously they match the machine, the Collingwood team, the late 20s. So we've talked about that before. So, but I hope Geelong beat them. But I don't want Geelong or Hawthorn to win the grand final.
Me neither.
I think Sydney's my tip. Who's yours?
Well, we've covered this because if West Coast win another one, it'll mean that I have to listen to them say the same gag over and over. The only ship that hasn't come into Freo Harbour is the Premier. So I don't want West Coast to win.
Yeah.
I'm sick of seeing the other ones win.
Yeah.
So Adelaide.
Oh, okay.
Go Crows.
Oh, no, Crows are, they're up and about, but they crow too much.
Who's the only team that has won from 5th in the modern game? Because you keep
Crows.
quoting all the VFL premierships,
Crows.
which nobody cares about.
Crows.
There we go.
But St Kilda, when they were bloody 5 goals down at half time or something like that, and stormed over.
Crows. And the
Jamison played forward pocket, kicked 4 or 5, won the premiership for him. Amazing.
And the bye
Under
from
Melbourne
last
White.
week is going to favour 5th place. Mm-hmm. So that's all. It's all. The planets are lining up.
Yeah, and I had a mate who played in that premiership too. The one that Tony Lockett took his nose off, remember?
Yeah, what's his name?
Oh,
Must have been a good mate. If you
Yeah,
remember
it's a
his
really
name.
good mate. This is embarrassing now.
Yeah. What if he listens? And he's sitting here and you still cue the crickets.
Not going there. Cue the crickets. He lives in Adelaide still. Got a lovely wife, Nicole. That's who I met him through.
So you remember his
No,
wife, you
Nicole,
don't remember him.
but I can't remember.
Might have to start calling you Wayne Carey.
I'm going to have to Google it. I'm going to run out of here and get my phone.
Oh, well, there we go. In the
Okay,
meantime,
we move on.
we've
move
hit
on.
episode number 80.
80.
Can you believe that?
Yep.
80, which
Beautiful.
is brilliant. So
Excellent.
They said we'd never make it, but we finally came through. So
Now my mind's still back on.
I know it is. I know. You're distracted.
It's so
I have to tell the
distracted.
listeners, I'm actually enjoying it.
The pain. The pain.
That's terrible.
Oh, keep going. Hopefully it'll come to me over the next 30
Let's
minutes.
build it up. Was he a really good mate? Like
No.
One that
No.
one that you'd never forget his name?
No, that's definitely not the case.
Yeah, okay.
But I'm going to have to check.
Hey folks,
into
Facebook
memory
Live,
school.
September 13. Put it in your diaries. We'd love to have you there. We're going to unpack the book. And apparently we never say unpack. So I'm going to say unpack the book. And you want to talk about some GDP numbers?
Yep, I want to celebrate 25 years. It's official. 25 years of positive economic growth for this fine nation. Now that's insanely impressive.
Don't quote me on this, but I think it's hitting a record. I think Finland was, prior to that, held the record, and then the GFC knocked that on the head.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we might be hitting some sort of record for that many quarters with so
Positive.
much up and not a lot of down.
So for those who don't know economics, how you define a recession is 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP. So we've just had our latest quarter data come out and we were 0.5 in growth, which gives us an annualised GDP number of 3.3, which is wonderful. And I think if we go back over that 25-year period, this is a calculated guess, but I think there were 2, possibly 3 negative quarters, but not consecutive negative quarters. So I think it was 2 from memory. There was 3.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm getting the symbol of 3.
Yeah.
And there was obviously one just after the GFC, but we managed to get on top of that. So, yeah, just amazing result.
Can you remember the word recession has such a powerful impact probably on most of the Gen X listeners here, probably the baby boomers.
Yeah.
Because when that recession happened, I was at high school. I was in a middle class family, probably on the lower end of middle class.
Yep.
And my dad was born in the shadows of the Great Depression. So for him, he's pre-baby boomer. He just battened down the hatches and was heavily... that statement was something that I just remember, and it has a little bit of a negative pang because it just seems like recession was the end of the world. Yeah.
It was serious, wasn't it? I mean, it was chronic. I mean, we had inflation above 10%. We had interest rates sitting up around 17, 18%.
Yep.
Farmers going broke, people losing jobs, high unemployment. It was a tough recession, but that tough recession led to amazing reform. And that's the challenge that we've got right now, because we've had such a long period of fantastic economic growth. We've got this sense of entitlement, the sense that government is there to supply money that they don't have to keep us, giving us the services and the healthcare and the education that we need. So everyone's posturing for all this cash when technically we should be, being smarter about our spending. So it's a spending problem more than a revenue problem, and that's the challenge.
Did you hear Peter Costello the other day with the Future Fund?
Yeah.
See how much money they've got, and that was from the days when we were back in surplus, and how much money they'd set aside for the future generations.
But, it's terrific. And those types of initiatives are really important. If we go to Norway, we can see, Norway has an enormous reserve of oil. And so that oil then means that, in terms of per population, I think they've got about $250,000 per every individual person that lives in Norway. Now that is a wonderful position to be in, and so they're guaranteeing prosperity and future wealth for their people. We've got to make some of those tough decisions. So put it away and invest it, which is really good, but we've also got to say to ourselves, some of the things that we're doing around spending aren't, we've got to cut back, we've got to get better around that, we've got to do tough tax reform, we've got to change our goods and services tax. We've got to definitely increase that. We've got to spread the load. It's a good tax because it's based on consumption. So all of those things are important, and we've got all of these other taxes which are terrible, such as stamp duty. It's not
payroll
productive.
tax.
Don't start. Don't start me on payroll tax. It's like the window tax of England at the time in the 70s.
For the privilege of employing someone, you can pay some tax. Hey, the Norway model's a bit different, isn't it? The resources are controlled by the government, whereas here we get the royalties instead.
Correct. Yeah. So that's the point. And we tried to bring in a mining tax, but it wasn't well discussed and debated, and but at the end of the day, they're out. It's our minerals, our resources. So we are absolutely the lucky country because we're well positioned for Asia. We've got some resources in the ground, and that's going to see our GDP get really positive over the course of the next few years. In fact, the natural gas and the iron ore price holding up at the level that it is means that our GDP numbers are probably going to be even more surprising on the upside than what one would have anticipated, except for the construction boom. If the construction boom slows right down, and this is the problem that the RBA are facing right now, they're seeing that in the past they could do a fairly strong correlation between employment and GDP. So if you had GDP running between 3 and 4%, you pretty much had a full workforce. But now with all of this more efficient mining, and we're getting and extracting this dirt and this gas out more effectively with less workers, that correlation is now changing. So we've got a really good terms of trade, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to have a full workforce, and we've still got spare capacity in the workforce.
So what does that mean for our property investors?
Well, I think that, the challenges which we've already alluded to is around oversupply and construction and sentiment and confidence around medium and high density stuff. So that's still going to be an issue. I mean, we're still seeing approval numbers for apartments above what I would expect to be sustainable. And I'd also say that even though they're improvements, they've still got to build them. And I think once people realise that they're not making for good investments at the moment, then a lot of those approvals won't necessarily get out of the ground.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah.
Now you want to build a statue?
I want to build a statue.
For Mr. Stevens?
Oh, yes, Glenn Stevens. Like, little shout out to the man. If you want to be a public servant, you want to be the best public servant around the nation. He's the man. He navigated us through some extraordinary times, and his ability to, Ian McFarlane was very good as well. Their ability to use the media as a means to forward notify.
Jawbone.
Yeah, well, in some cases jawbone when he needed to try and knock the currency down a bit. But the way in which he managed and foreshadowed changes meant that we didn't have this jolting impact on monetary policy. So credit to the man, he's a legend, and he's done a great service to this nation, and we are. The monetary policy component of what he's been able to do has meant that we've got this record of 25 years of positive economic growth. So enjoy your retirement, Glenn. Get on a couple of boards, and keep doing the work that you're doing, because I know someone of that ilk can't slow down very, very interestingly, or very easily, I should say.
The question when someone says you're on a deserted island and choose three
Who would
people.
you want to be? Yeah.
Is he on the list?
Yeah, well, to the dinner party for me. So he'd be probably 10 at the dinner party.
Yeah.
Probably not 3 on the island.
Yeah.
His
Can't
approach
tell
and
us
his mannerisms are a little bit. I need a little bit
I was
up and
gonna
about.
say, needs a cold shower.
Yeah, I get distracted easily.
All right, very true. Yeah, you probably get.
All right, so what are we talking about today?
Mate, I thought let's riff it. Let's talk about. So people are going to go this weekend and they're going to go and buy a property for their portfolio.
Yep.
And they are going to have to ask a few questions of the real estate agent. One of the ones I always recommend you ask is you need to understand the vendor's motivation.
Oh, yes.
Why they're selling.
Critical. So we're talking about the 4 Ds.
The 4 Ds.
Fantastic.
Of what makes a vendor highly motivated.
All right.
But so the reason that you want to ask the reason why the vendor's selling is because it's going to make more for the negotiating from your side. It's all about time, information.
Yep.
And if you can get as much information as you can, that's going to help you. So you just meet the other people's needs, Ivis. And
beautiful. He's looking for confirmation here, and he's got it. I just gave you some eye contact, and away we go. So stick it. Thanks very much for that. All right, so let's get to them. So these 4 Ds. First one is divorce.
Divorce. This one's interesting because the characteristics of divorce, as you'd imagine, is it's a highly emotional time in people's life. We may have some listeners who can relate to this. And a lot of it's around spite. So it's important to understand that quite often it's not just about the cash.
Yeah.
It's about the people are emotionally exhausted.
Yep.
Sometimes they want to get back at each other. Sometimes they want to just make it difficult. So, and really what they want is they want a quick settlement, a quick parting, and move on very, very quickly. So if you understand that, well then you can negotiate accordingly. So
yeah, I think that's really important. I mean, yes, understand the backstory. Okay, so divorce. One of the things I love to say, because an agent usually does not want to, explain the motivation. So
correct.
So the question is, so what's the motivation of the seller? Standard question you ask, and the real estate agents are going to be very good, and they're going to say, oh, they've got a change in circumstances, so they're looking to move the property on. Oh, change in circumstances.
Yeah.
Oh, so direct question. Are they getting divorced? Yeah. So straight at them, very hard to not, oh, look, I'm not at liberty to say. Not at liberty to say, that's a yes. A no is obviously a no, but you don't want them to be lying to you. And then the yes is, ooh, you beauty.
Yeah.
So, okay, so I know I've got a motivated seller, and I definitely agree. So then the tips that we were referring to is really important to understand. So if it's relatively amicable, you can negotiate pretty quick. You want a no fuss arrangement and an outcome. But I also say sometimes it can't go that easy. So sometimes I give you an example. If it's not amicable and the two parties hate each other and one of them wants to make a point to the other, they just make it difficult. One wants to sell, one doesn't want to sell. No one's paying the mortgage, it's just getting messy. And so even if you want to try and get a quick sale away, sometimes it doesn't always fall that way, does it? You just got, look, they're going to take it to auction or they're going to get it to a result. So if you're in a good area, it doesn't necessarily always mean that you're going to get a win, but it gives you an opportunity to have a go, doesn't it?
Well, by nature, divorce is around disagreement, isn't it? So there might be a fair chance that there is some disagreement. But, be on guard, be on alert for the fact that they want to part their worlds very quickly.
Yep.
So if you give them no fuss, business-like transaction, that's definitely a positive. Make sure you're ready.
Yep.
And this should be a tip, irrespective, is to make sure you're pre-approved, got deposit ready, got your team lined up. But it's quite often people aren't.
Yeah.
Excuse me. But if you're deal ready and you can make unconditional offers, that's going to appeal to them. Because quite often it's about the split, not the price. So make sure that you ask what's important to them outside of price. What sort of terms do they need to satisfy them? That's a question that's often
I think it's a ripper. All right, so D number 1, divorce. D number 2, Bryce.
Debt.
Debt.
They're in debt.
There's that money thing again.
Yeah. Well, mortgagee sales, the obvious one.
Yes.
Yep. But one of the things that's characteristic about something around debt is the bank's generally interested in only getting their money back.
Correct.
Whereas the people who are selling are very keen to get the most that they can. So for them, again, making it easy for them to transact. And again, if you can make because if they're under pressure from the bank, the shorter time frame that you can give them, the better in control that they can stay.
I agree.
And they really do want to stay in control. And it's really not typical in a low interest rate environment.
No, it's not. And so from a mortgagee sale, what a lot of people need to realise is that there's usually a lot of legal process that has gone on to make this happen. In other words, the bank is basically forcing the vendor to sell the property. So there's legal parties getting involved to get access and a judgment to allow that to happen. So, and it's going to be controversial, but the lawyers have got the snout in the their snout in the trough, and they are making big money out of this. In some cases, I've heard of $50,000 in legal fees. Right. So part of that is to then get in contact with the agent and say, all right, the longer this thing goes on, the more it's going to cost your vendors. So let's try and get a deal done here, and it's going to be in their best interest, because if they want to fight it, they're going to be up for more and more legal costs on their side. And the bank also has the judgment where all of their legal fees are also going to come out above what they get, in terms of paying off the loan. So it's a really important point to sort of work with the agent and say, come on, we will need to get something done here. Now, if the agent's got a lot of interest, some of that's going to wash over, but he doesn't have a lot of interest. In other words, if you're seeing a rough diamond, then it's definitely a good little strategy to get on the front foot.
Absolutely. So if you can find it, you get a quick settlement, because remember, even if you offer them below market value, it might be better than what they were going to get if the bank just liquidates it and does a fire sale. So if the normal's 60 days, be ready to do 30. If the normal's 45, be ready to do 25. Be as quick as you possibly can to settle, to take away the person's pain.
Yeah.
It sounds a little bit sort of predatorial, but they're going to sell with or without you. So
look, the
make
reality
it easy for them
is
to do.
that they haven't managed their money well. Their circumstances have got them in this predicament, and they just need a fresh start. So, part of what you're trying to do is say, look, tell the vendors, I can help that fresh start out really quickly. Now, one of the other things that I do notice around mortgagee sales, though, is that there are a lot of vultures who sort of circle around them and think that they're going to get the deal of the century. Now, so one of the tips I have here, if it is a quality property in a quality location, you don't want to get your hopes up too high to try and get the so-called deal of the century. So don't lowball it too hard where you miss out on the deal. You are better off making a good deal based on what you know, because if you're going to upset the agent, and he's going to know whether he's got interest in the property or not. So, most of the time, some of these mortgagee sales are in poorer areas and they wouldn't necessarily make for investment grade purchases. But if you get a good one, don't think that you're going to get the deal of the century. I always say be conscious of that to make sure that you still price it right to get it. Now, that should mean that you may not have to pay top dollar for it or overs, but don't think you're going to get huge unders.
Negotiation tip for the listeners is the best negotiation isn't often price.
Yeah.
The best negotiation often is securing it. Because if you go economic activity, human interest, human behaviour, it's in the right area, location does the heavy lifting, so all of the things we talked about for the last 79 episodes. Sometimes jockeying for position to get it is the best negotiation that you can do. You're not going to sit there at a barbecue and tell your mates how much you drew it out, took 2 weeks, back and forth, you showed the agent. It might mean that and it's invisible. You might have beat the other 5 or 6 people that could have got it because you were prepared to act fast. And you might have paid a little bit over the odds to get it. But if you're playing the long game, down the track, because it's an A-grade property in an A-grade location with all of the other elements that we layer onto the decision, that's sometimes the gold. So it's important not to lose sight of that.
Speaking of gold, I want everyone to listen to that section that Bryce just said again. That is some of the most insightful, best practice approaches you'll ever hear in terms of approaching. Well done, you've nailed that. Absolutely nailed it.
I bought a property this week for a client, and we paid $730 for it. And it was a 3-bedroom villa unit in Yarraville. There's not many 3-bedroom villa units in Yarraville. And I've got the sole exclusive right to negotiate off market with the agent without competition. And so when I'm going through the negotiation, I'm in the back of my mind remembering that I've got the jockey, I've jockeyed for position, I'm in pole position, I've got no one else competing for this property, because I know for a fact that if they put a for sale sign out the front and an auction crowd turned up and scarce 3-bedroom, and it's walking distance to Seddon train station. I mean, you can see the train station from. I just know, but I can't quantify that to the client and say, well, you paid $730, but if it went to auction, it would have probably got $780.
Yeah.
Because that's just a story. But I just know from experience that is exactly the case. So sometimes it's not about price.
No.
Because I didn't negotiate incredibly sort of drawn out on that one. Just made a quick decision, got it done.
Right, brilliant. Love it. So second D is debt. Third D
Desperation.
is desperation, mate. Talk us through this.
Desperation. Mate, it's when someone bites off more than they can chew.
Yep.
When they've made a decision to buy the next one without selling the one they've already got, and they're looking down the barrel of bridging finance, they're looking down the barrel of the vice-like grip that's going on their head. It's an uncomfortable situation. So, and quite often they'll need the sale for a deposit.
Yeah.
And
it's a classic mistake, isn't it? Where you buy.
Can I tell you this, Ben? The investment savvy mortgage broker. I'm not going to name names here, but I've got a deal that I did with someone where the mortgage broker said to me, because it's external to us, so I'm dealing with external clients. And they said,
because our guys wouldn't do that.
Well, they wouldn't. This just goes to show what an investment savvy mortgage broker does, and sometimes you can forget because it happens so regularly.
Yep.
I sent them a little note and I said, they go, they're pre-approved for $700,000. I go, great. And then I said to the client, where are we going to get the deposit from? And they go, don't know. So I go back to the mortgage broker and I say, just out of interest, I just want to make sure I get a contract today for $700,000. I'm going to need $70,000 cash. Where am I going to get it from? He goes, no. We're just going to tie it all up at settlement. We'll just get it done at settlement because the parents are going to throw some security in. I said, that's great, but how does this client pay for a deposit? And he responds back and he goes, we'll just use a deposit bond. I'm like, are you serious?
Yeah. So where's your negotiating power?
No.
Where's that, bird in the hand approach? Here's the deal, here's the contract, here's the check, this is going to happen. You got nothing.
Well, it's actually professionally naive.
Yeah.
Because you can't get a deal done in the established market without access to a deposit. So lucky we have a process in our business that makes sure that we anticipate everything that's going to happen and we bring it back nice and early and we ask the question. So long story short, I went back to the financial planner who referred it to me. I said, this is the status. Went back to the parents. The parents said, look, we'll give you the $70,000 until settlement.
Yep.
But that would have been egg on face for everyone at settlement if we hadn't actually done that.
So you make a good point about deposit bonds, and I'm sure we'll talk about this in the future, but it's the first time we've probably talked about it. So with a deposit bond, what you need to understand is they're commonly used more so for off-the-plan purchases. But you can do exactly what that broker said in terms of using a deposit bond as a deposit, as a holdover. So basically it's a charge. But what we're alluding to here is that most selling agents don't get it. And it's convoluted for them, and it's hard for them to explain it to their vendor. So they get scared off by it, and they want an easy transaction, and they want to look professional in front of their vendor. So if they don't understand it well, then the reality is they're not going to pitch it well, and so it's going to be a bad opportunity for you to negotiate harder. So by you knowing that you've got that cash and that's check in the bank, that makes it perfect. So we'll talk more about deposit bonds in future episodes, but it's a really good point to sort of say, if you're not going to have the confidence of the selling agent to go in to get the deal done, then really you're probably not going to win the deal more often than not.
Supply and demand. When you're off the plan, the developer will do whatever it takes to get a deal done when it's just a single property. But here's the key with a deposit bond for a real estate agent. Who collects the deposit? The real estate agent. The real estate agent puts it in their trust account, and what is the minimum amount of deposit that any agent will ever accept?
Their commission.
The amount to cover their commission. So a deposit bond doesn't give them any security to cover their commission. So if economics is the study of human incentives, you've just taken the incentive away from the agent to work in your best interest with the deposit bond.
Another bit of gold.
Doesn't happen.
Absolutely another bit of gold. So staying on desperation, How do you know when the vendor is desperate? Well, sometimes when you've got the agent chasing you. So if the agent keeps chasing you, then that can be an indication to sort of say that there's a bit of desperation here. And you want to say, gee, that's the second time you've chased me up this week without me contacting you. What's going on here, Mr. Agent? Is there something? Are they on a deadline? Because if they're on a deadline, I'll move the conversation to price and terms. Because effectively I can then negotiate a little bit harder because I have a bit more insight into the situation.
So if you're skilled at asking for reasons from the real estate agent, typical desperation stuff, new baby has arrived, close to school years and they want to get into different school zones. They've just received an overseas job, maybe some illness, or they're getting a bit old, and maybe even an interstate romance. If you can draw these out of the agent, and let's be honest, it's not easy to do. You've got to be able to ask good, open questions. And they're not going to, So one of the ways we often ask for other interest is you don't say to the real estate agent, "Is there other interest?" You go, "How many building inspections have been done?"
Yeah.
Because they're not ready for it. And they go, "Oh, 1, 2, 3, none." So you've got to ask better questions to get the answer to the question you really want to ask.
Correct. And if you're probing well and you're not getting the answer that you want around desperation, that's a good sign. But if you get an answer from the agent that says something along the lines of, look, these guys are in no rush, they don't have to sell or whatever, you've got that answer. So the desperation piece is gone. But if you're probing in certain ways and you're still not getting, you think that there's still a little bit of uncertainty, more likely than not, they're in a situation where they have to sell and they basically, they need to then execute. So that's a good sign.
That's actually a good point on the story I said before. The couple that I bought the property from that we're chatting about before, they had just come back from Texas. It's been over for a couple of years. Money wasn't an issue. In fact, they were unmotivated to sell because they bought a property around the corner in Seddon that they were going to renovate, and they actually didn't need the money. They wanted the money, but they didn't need the money for that. And so the whole time I'm putting two and two together. I don't want a for sale sign at the front. I don't want an auction crowd. They're not as motivated as I'd like them to be. So that plays into how I'm going to negotiate and play the game.
Yeah, you're looking for an angle. Effectively, you're looking for the angle. And obviously, in some cases, that angle on desperation can be shut down pretty quickly. They don't have to sell. But in other cases, you're probing for that angle.
Very probing.
Beautiful.
Ben. The tip is, Ben, when it's desperation, ask for a really long settlement.
Love it.
And watch the agent's eyes. So ask, normal in Melbourne is 60. Would they accept 120 days?
No, they need no.
Because that's the antithesis of desperation right there. So
we're looking for a 120-day settlement because we haven't sold our property yet. No. Okay.
Actually, these guys
committed somewhere
They'd
else.
really love 30 days. Okay. Very good.
All right, so we've gone divorce, debt, desperation, and the last D is
death.
Dum, dum, dum.
Death, exactly. This one's a really tricky one.
It is.
Highly emotional.
Yep.
Often the children are selling.
Yep.
Mum and dad's house, for example.
Yep.
So you've got to have that awareness around that being highly emotional. And one of the things to remember is that it's a family home. The emotions are raw. They might have been there for a long, long time. So how many times, Ben, have you heard the story where a vendor chose for it to go to another family or another real person at the expense of a developer, for example, who was prepared to pay more just because they didn't want to see mum and dad's family home get bowled over with 3 or 4 townhouses on it?
Yeah.
So it's important to understand that emotional environment is something that you want to tread carefully, but it's something that you could take advantage of to make sure that it's sold to you rather than the guy pulling up in the Mercedes with his architect and his project manager in tow.
Correct. I mean, there's countless examples that I can think of, Bryce, exactly on that point where the vendor, alive or dead, has made the call. The family's either made the call on the passing, or the vendor has basically said, I just really like that young family and I want them to build memories in this house. So some people don't sell just for money. So it's a really good point there. Now, what's interesting about the other side of it is the selling agent absolutely wants to put in big bold letters across the front of their ad, deceased estate. Because from the buyer's point of view, they're going, bargain. They're sort of looking for that opportunity to go, I think I'm going to get a good deal here because it's deceased estate. So So that's the delicate thing for the selling agent to talk about with the family afterwards. It's like, look, do we want to get the best deal here? And if it is all about maximising the return, then do I have permission to talk about it as being a deceased estate sale? Because that usually creates interest because the buyer thinks I'm going to get a bargain sometimes. Yeah.
But here's the big hot tip for the buyers is quite often they go to auction.
Yeah.
And that's because there's too many interested parties in play, and getting sister one who lives in London to agree with brother two who lives locally, who's always looked after mum. Often there's a bit going on.
Yep.
So quite often the agents think, well, it's much easier to get a joint decision done for a deceased estate under the hammer. So you've got to be aware of that. But if you don't actually get... I'll rephrase it. If you do get an opportunity to buy it when it's not under the hammer, there's a couple of opportunities. The beneficiaries may not be locals and may not understand value.
Yeah.
They may just want to move on. So there might be an opportunity there to, and I say that really sensitively because our listener base is looking to unemotionally buy an asset for themselves to get the best opportunity.
And our job as buyers agents is to buy as best we can.
Correct.
That's what they're paying us for. So we've got to be detached from that emotional story, don't we?
We do. So, but we don't want to be unethical and just be vultures.
So
look for opportunities. What do they need outside of price that we can satisfy them on? Do they need a quick settlement? Do they need a long settlement?
Beautiful.
Do they need a really easy transaction? Look for those things to make them comfortable whilst you're trying to distract them on price.
Correct. I mean, we know that if you upset the agent or the vendor, some just get stubborn and they say, I don't want that person to own the property. So, it is a very delicate, tread that we basically walk along. Just stumbled through my words there, to try and get to the other side. So, that is the art of negotiation and the art of doing it professionally as opposed to coming in with a sledgehammer and being arrogant, because those types of buyers agents, some of them are out there. They don't win friends and influence people, do they, mate?
No, they don't. And I don't sort of encourage anyone to be ambulance chasers either. So the people who go to lawyers' offices just trawling for mortgagee sales, trawling for deceased estate, trawling for divorces, I think that's too opportunistic. Some people do it, that's fine. For me, I just want to get a good deal.
Hard call for us.
Yep. In the moment, we'll do the transaction to get our clients a good outcome. So there we go, mate.
There's 4, so wrapping them up. Let's go. Divorce, debt, desperation and or death. So there are some great motivations as to why a vendor is motivated to sell.
Highly motivated to sell.
Highly motivated.
So for those of you that are in the market currently, Ben, who are looking to buy this weekend at auction, or they're looking to buy a private sale, maybe have those 4 Ds in mind as you're talking to the agent. See if you can ask better questions, so that you can get better answers to see if any of those 4 pop up for you.
Knowledge is empowering. The more knowledge you have, the more opportunity presents to you.
You want wisdom, not knowledge, don't you?
Yep.
Wisdom is knowledge in action.
That is it.
So, very, very good. Facebook Live, September 13th, Ibis.
Yeah.
We are unpacking all of the strategies. The book, which will be good. So there is an opportunity for you to get a copy on the website. We'll give you a 30% discount if you put Facebook Live or FB Live as the coupon code.
And you'll get over this little cold of yours again, mate, by then, hopefully. You sort of,
4 times in 1 year.
I know, you're a bit flat, a bit hard, a bit nasally, so I can understand that. It happens. It happens, but you've done a great job.
Mate. You've
done a great job soldiering.
You always pot shot me at the food I eat. Now all of a sudden you're just like, yes.
It's the diet,
Your
mate.
pie and chips is nailing my grass.
My steak and chips.
Shout out to all the listeners. There's actually some listeners, Ben, that are doing the GAPS diet that my wife and I do with the kids. So just when you think that you don't have anyone else out there who's doing it. So folks, for anyone who's interested, it's old school eating that your great grandparents would do. Lots of broths, lots of stocks, lots of old school food. And the good news is my 3-year-old who's on the autism spectrum is showing incredible signs. So that's really, really good.
Well, look, mate, that's great. Diet is everything. We keep seeing it. We are what we eat. So hence, when I'm dead in 5 years' time and you're living healthily, that's what's going to happen. So I'm very conscious.
But I'll be able to deliver your eulogy with the flu, mate, so that's okay.
Well, at least you'll be around to do that. So that's the big part. Have we done Bulgarian?
I don't think we have, mate.
Well, how come it's not ticked? See, I'm highly organised. This is the one thing that I have to do
Ben's
at the end of each show. Oh, but we've made a call, haven't we? At the end of this year, at the end of 2016, we're moving on. We're moving on to a new sign-up. I've got a couple of good ideas.
And we're going to throw it out to the listeners too.
Are we?
Go to Facebook.
So don't worry about my ideas.
No, your ideas are great, but I wonder if the listeners have got better ones. So Ibis, on Facebook today, when you post a picture, underneath we want to know what the sign-off should be. It doesn't have to be a language. It can be a fun fact. It can be a population of the world. It can be anything, Ben. And we're going to throw it over to the listeners, and then we're going to match it up with yours and see who's is better.
Okay, that sounds like a plan. Sounds like I've got a job. At least I know that I'm on the podcast longer term. Because it sounds like I got a job into 2017.
I don't know. We'll let you know. You can't remember your best mate's name.
Don't come later. Oh, Pete Caven. It just came to me.
Yeah, just
straight away, right at the end. Peter Caven.
Peter Caven.
Yeah, and he won. One year actually won the goal kicking. At the half time they do the sprint and they did a goal kicking one. Mm-hmm. Pete Caven, raking left foot kick, very good footballer. Sorry, Pete.
You like this, mate?
Holy embarrassing. He's going to reach out to me on.
Before you sign off, a big shout out to the big source in the office here. He's got his grand final this weekend.
Yes,
he's a listener.
Good luck, Brad. Never won a senior grand final in football. He's been playing a long time, so big game for him locally in local football here in Melbourne. So Fijian. Okay, I'm doing Fijian now. Shout out to...
Don't carry into Fijian.
Oh, no, well, obviously Ivis just pointed to one and she said that.
She's the boss,
so she's the boss, so I've got to do it. Just a little note on Fiji. Obviously had that really bad cyclone that went through there, one of the worst cyclones. And shout out to Simon and Sarah, so two great people, two Australian people, and Simon has Fijian heritage. So they've... basically quit their jobs and headed over there, and they're currently teaching in a remote island in a village whilst they rebuild the village. So they're making sure that the kids, so just really wonderful volunteers, great people. So shout out to you two guys, well, wonderful job over there.
I got married in Fiji.
Oh, another spot. I had my honeymoon in Fiji. So there's some connections. All right, so now I'm going to completely tank on this.
Hey, Simba gave you some feedback last week.
Oh, yeah, thanks, Simba.
He said you...
botched it.
He said you sucked, didn't he?
He says it was terrible, but it made him laugh.
Yeah.
So as long as I'm bringing laughter into this world, that's all I care about. Maybe. All right, I'll wrap it up. Here we go. Fijian, Nisa Mose. Mose? No, I don't know.
What happens at the end when you your volume tapers off? What's
going on? It's Mose, M-O-C-E, Mose.
We need to get it phonetically. Do you remember what I sent you when I was telling you? Remember when...
that's what happened. I had it phonetically in front of me last week.
Yeah,
and I
got slammed for it. Yeah. The one I sent from the kinder, when I picked it up from the kinder, and I said, we should bring that in, because if the kids can say it, Ben can say it.
Nisa Mose.
There we go, folks.
I don't know.
Anyway, there we go, folks. I know we lose the credibility, but
it
amuses us.
All our listeners in Fiji,
I'm sorry. But Bulla Bulla and...
there you go, straight back to what you know.
And then we'll see you next week, folks. Arrivederci.